The fuel lines at Port Neville were slow. They were always slow. Ryanair had docked here 4 times in the last 2 years, and every single time, she sat in the same plastic chair outside Base 7 and waited while the port's ancient refueling system chugged along at its own pace. She did not mind. She had a sandwich. She had a warm drink in a battered steel cup. And she had nothing to do for the next hour except watch people move through the docking corridor and wonder about their lives. Port Neville was not a beautiful place. It sat at the edge of Vorith Confederacy space, a mid-sized transit hub built for function and nothing else. The walls were gray. The floors were gray. The signs were printed in 7 languages, and every single one of them was faded. Cargo haulers, freight runners, small traders, and long route pilots all passed through here on their way to somewhere better. Ria was watching a group of Vorith dock workers argue over a loading manifest when she noticed the woman sitting alone near Bay 14. She was Vorith, tall, with long pale limbs and the smooth, angular face of her species. She was sitting on a cargo crate with her hands folded in her lap, very still, very quiet. She was not doing anything. She was just sitting there. But what caught Ria's eye were the patches of bioluminescence along her neck and collarbone. Vorith had them the way humans had expressions. They shifted with mood. Right now, those patches were dim, almost dark. They flickered once, slowly, like a lamp running out of power. Ria had seen that before. Once, at a different port, after a Vorith trader lost his entire cargo to a hull breach. Drav had told her what it meant. She leaned over and knocked her elbow against the seat beside her, where Drav was half asleep with his cap pulled over his eyes. Hey. Drav did not move. I'm not asleep. That woman near Bay 14. What do you see? He pushed his cap up and looked. He was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled the cap back down. She's grieving. I know that. What? Not our business, Ria. Ria looked at the sealed door of Bay 14. There was a yellow impound notice printed across it, the kind that Port Authority used. She had seen a few of those in her years on the trade lanes. They never meant anything good. She finished her drink, set the cup on the chair, and walked over. The woman did not look up when Ria approached. She was staring at the sealed bay door with the steady, patient look of someone who had already run out of things to do. Ria stopped a few feet away. That your ship in there? The woman looked at her. Her eyes were pale gray, wide-set, very calm. Yes. How long has it been sealed? 3 days. Ria sat down on the edge of a nearby crate, not too close. I'm Ria. I fly the Callan's Run, that beat-up hauler in Base 7. The woman was quiet for a moment. Santal. What happened, Santal? Santal looked back at the door. A tax dispute. The Port Authority says I owe 4,200 credits in cargo penalties. I do not have 4,200 credits. The payment window closes tomorrow morning. After that, the ship goes to auction. She said it plainly. No anger. No tears. Just the flat, clear voice of someone who had already processed the disaster and was now sitting inside the wreckage of it. Ria looked at the impound notice on Bay 14's door. Is the debt real? I mean, did you actually make the error they're citing? The Vorith woman's patches were barely glowing now. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just quietly dim. Like something fading. What's the officer's name? Ria asked. Captain Harith. He is in the Authority building on level 3. Ria nodded slowly. She stayed sitting for another few seconds. Then she stood up, brushed the dust off her jacket, and looked at the sealed door one more time. She thought about her delivery schedule. She thought about the 6 days until her freight payment cleared. She thought about the fact that this was not her species, not her port, not her problem. Then she thought about those dim, flickering patches and the way Santal had said the ship goes to auction without her voice even breaking. Santal looked up at her. Okay. Just sit tight. I'm going to find out what's actually going on. She walked back toward Bay 7. Drav was sitting upright now, watching her with the long-suffering expression of a man who already knew what was coming. We have a schedule, he said. I know. We have a delivery window. I know, Drav. He looked past her at Santal, then back at Ria. He sighed. It was the sigh of a man who had been her co-pilot for 9 years and understood, very deeply, that sighing never actually worked. What do you need, he said. Everything you know about Vorith Port Law. He sighed again. This one was longer. Drav knew more about Vorith Port Law than he admitted at first. He had spent 3 years running freight through Confederacy space before he joined up with Ria, and he had learned to read the law the way pilots read weather, not because he liked it, but because ignoring it had consequences. He pulled up what he had on his NAV tablet, while Rhea paced the small common area of the Callan's run. Vorth commercial debt law is built around a 72-hour collection window, he said. Once a penalty is formally filed, the debtor has 72 hours to pay or appeal. If neither happens, the asset, in this case, the ship, goes to auction. No extensions. No exceptions. She said she filed an explanation. An explanation is not an appeal. Those are two different things under Vorth law. An appeal has to cite a specific legal ground. An explanation is just talking. He set the tablet down. She probably didn't know the difference. Most people outside the Confederacy don't. Rhea stopped pacing. When does the 72-hour window close? Tomorrow. Early. And the auction? Same morning. Port Authority usually moves fast. They don't like holding impounded vessels. He paused. There's also the matter of the scrap dealer. Rhea looked at him. What scrap dealer? Drav turned the tablet toward her. On the port's public trading board, under a category called pending assets, a listing had been posted. It was for the navigation array of a mid-class Vorth freighter, posted by a dealer named Breck 3 hours ago. The listing was marked conditional pending auction outcome. Rhea read it twice. That NAV array is still in the ship. The ship hasn't been auctioned yet. No, but Breck has clearly already spoken to someone at Port Authority. Rhea pulled on her jacket. Come with me. I want to go talk to Santal. They found her exactly where Rhea had left her, sitting on the crate near Bay 14's sealed door, still and quiet. She looked up when they approached. No surprise. No particular hope. Just acknowledgement. They sat down nearby, and Rhea asked her to explain everything from the beginning. Santal did. She was precise, organized, calm. She laid out the sequence of events the way a navigator lays out a route, clearly, without shortcuts. She had picked up a legitimate cargo at Port Duval 6 weeks ago. Agricultural equipment, properly licensed. The outbound processor at Port Duval had entered her cargo class as industrial equipment, a different tax category, higher penalties for underpayment. The error was the processor's, not hers. She had not noticed it on her manifest copy because the error was in a secondary classification field she did not regularly check. When Port Nevil's system ran her manifest on arrival, it flagged the mismatch. She had been called to the authority office, shown the discrepancy, and told she owed 4,200 credits in back tax penalties plus processing fees. She had submitted a written explanation the same day, attaching her original cargo documents from Port Duval. Captain Harith had reviewed them. He had then told her that while her explanation was noted, the 72-hour penalty window had already begun at the moment of arrival flagging, and that an explanation was not sufficient to pause it. An appeal would have required her to file within the first 24 hours under a specific legal statute she had not known about. By the time she understood the difference, the 24-hour mark had already passed. Rhea listened to all of it without interrupting. When Santal finished, Rhea sat with it for a moment. Who told you about the 24-hour appeal window? She asked. Santal was quiet. No one. I found it myself when I was reading the law documents. After the window had passed. Harith didn't mention it when you first came in. Drav looked at Rhea across the top of Santal's head. She could read his expression clearly. He had found the same thing she had. Rhea leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. Santal, the debt, 4,200 credits. What did you do to try to get that together? Santal's bioluminescent patches shifted slightly. Dimmer. I contacted my freight broker. He cannot transfer funds across Confederacy borders in under 6 days. I contacted 2 other traders I know. Neither had the amount available. I asked the Port Authority if I could post partial payment. Captain Harith said partial payment does not satisfy the debt under Vorth law. She looked at the sealed door. This ship is my home. I have lived and worked on it for 11 years. I have no other address. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then Drav stood up, straightened his jacket, and looked at Rhea with the expression of a man who had already made up his mind but wanted it on record that he had reservations. I'm going to go back to the ship and pull up every Vorth commercial code document I can find. He looked at Santal briefly. The error started at Port Duval. That matters. Santal watched him go, then looked at Rhea. Why are you doing this? Rhea thought about it. Because your lights went dim, she said, and I didn't like it. Santa looked at her for a long moment. The patches at her neck pulsed once, faint, uncertain, like a question she had not found the words for yet. Ria stood up. I'm going to go see Harith. Tell me everything you remember about what he said, word for word. Level 3 of Port Neville smelled like recycled air and old paperwork. The Port Authority building was a narrow office block wedged between two cargo processing rooms. The floor was clean in the way that said the people who worked here cared about looking official, not about being comfortable. A young Vorith clerk at the front desk looked up when Ria walked in. I need to speak with Captain Harith, Ria said. Do you have an appointment? The clerk looked at her with the mild uncertainty that most Vorith had when dealing with humans. Not hostility, just the slightly puzzled look of someone encountering a creature that did not quite fit any expected category. He made a short call. Then he told her to wait. She waited 7 minutes. Then a door at the back of the office opened and Captain Harith came out. He was older, gray at his temples, with the careful posture of a man who had held authority for a long time and knew exactly how to carry it. He looked at Ria with polite, measured attention, the kind of look that was already preparing to say no before she had spoken. You are here about the Ember Drift, he said. It was not a question. Yes, Santal's ship. I've been reviewing the circumstances of the dead, and I have some questions. He gestured toward a small meeting room off the main corridor. Ria followed him in. They sat on opposite sides of a plain table. The penalty was filed correctly under Vorith Commercial Code, Harith said, before she had asked anything. The mislabeling was found on arrival. Standard procedure was followed. The mislabeling originated at Port Duval, Ria said, in the outbound processor's own records. Santal's original cargo documents correctly identify the cargo class. Harith nodded slightly. That is noted in her file. But the penalty still stands. The penalty was applied because the manifest on arrival carried the incorrect classification. Where the error originated is a matter for a separate complaint process against Port Duval. It does not change the obligation at this port. Ria kept her face calm. Was Santal informed of the 24-hour appeal window when she first came in? A short pause. The appeal process is part of standard port documentation. It is available on the authority's public information terminal. That's not what I asked. Did your office inform her of it directly? We are not required to provide individual legal guidance to every party that enters this office. She submitted her explanation the same day, within the first 24 hours. If your office had simply told her that what she needed to file was a formal appeal under Statute 7 of the Commercial Penalty Code, she would have had time to do it correctly. Harith looked at her without any change of expression. As I said, we are not required. To tell people the thing that would have helped them, yes. Ria said it evenly. I understand. She set her hands flat on the table. I also want to ask you about Breck. That got a reaction. Just a small one. A slight tightening around the eyes. I have no knowledge of Mr. Breck's business activities. He cited a pending auction outcome in the listing. That's a specific term that Port Authority uses in formal communications. It's not language a dealer would use unless he'd been in contact with someone here. Harith stood up. The meeting was ending. The debt stands. The timeline stands. If the payment is not made in full by 0600 tomorrow, the Ember Drift will be processed for auction under standard impound procedure. If you believe Port Authority acted improperly, you may file a complaint through the Confederacy Commerce Review Office. The process takes 8 to 12 weeks. He paused at the door. Humans have no legal standing in Vorith port disputes. I say that not unkindly, but as a matter of fact. You cannot represent this owner in any official capacity. Ria looked up at him from the chair. I know, she said. I'm not trying to represent her officially. Then I am not sure what you hope to accomplish. She walked out. She kept her pace steady all the way to the elevator. She rode down alone, replaying every word Harith had said, and, more carefully, every word he had not said. He had not denied knowing Breck. He had said he had no knowledge of Breck's business activities. That was a different thing. He had not said the appeal window was properly communicated. He had said they weren't required to communicate it. Also a different thing. And he had mentioned the Confederacy Commerce Review Office without being asked about it. He was not a stupid man. He knew that 8 to 12 weeks meant nothing here. He had named the complaint process because he wanted it to feel like a door, one that went nowhere in time to matter. Ria stepped out of the elevator and walked back toward the docking level. She needed Droth. She needed the law documents. and she needed to do something she had been quietly resisting for the last 20 minutes. She needed to look at her account balance. The Callan's run was quiet when Rhea came back aboard. Drav had cleared the small table in the common area and covered it with printed documents, actual paper, because he trusted paper more than screens when the details mattered. He had a cup of something warm at his elbow and a look on his face that said he had been busy and had found something. Rhea sat down across from him. She looked at the documents. She looked at him. "Tell me," she said. He tapped the top sheet. Vorith Commercial Penalty Code. Section 12, Subclause 4. It's about disputed debts where the originating error can be traced to a port authority system, not the debtor's own records. He slid the sheet toward her. If a third party can demonstrate that a port's own processing records contributed to the debt, they can file a co-signatory payment request and attach a formal administrative review citation. Port Authority then has to hold the auction for 48 hours while the review is logged. Rhea read the clause. It was dense and dry, written in the way that legal language always was, as if the person who wrote it wanted you to give up before the end of the sentence. But the meaning was there. A third party, she said. Yes, not the debtor. Someone external. That's us. That could be us. He folded his hands on the table. There's a condition. The co-signatory has to post the full debt amount alongside the review filing. It's held in escrow. If the review fails, the port keeps it. If it succeeds, the debt is reassessed and the money comes back, or is applied correctly. So we'd have to put up the 4,200. Yes. Rhea set the paper down. She already knew what was in her account. She had checked it in the elevator on the way back. 2,140 credits in her reserve fund. Her freight payment was 6 days out. She had nothing else liquid. She sat with that for a moment. I have 2,140, she said. Drav was quiet. That's half, she said. Drav reached across the table and turned one of the other papers toward her. It was his own account summary. She looked at the number at the bottom. She looked up at him. Drav. Don't. He picked up his cup and drank from it. I've been flying with you for 9 years. You know how many times you've done something like this for someone you didn't know. That's different. It isn't. He set the cup down. I have 2,100. Together, that's 4,240. 40 over what we need. He picked up the legal document again. The review filing has to cite the specific port processing records that show the original error. We'll need Port Nevil's own outbound log from Port Duval's transmission, the one that received the mislabeled manifest and processed it without flagging an incoming error. He paused. Those logs are technically public record under Confederacy Commerce Transparency Law. We can request them. Rhea looked at the table full of papers. She thought about Haritha's careful, polished non-answers. She thought about Breck's listing on the trading board, the NAV array already marked as pending, already being sold before the ship had even left Sandal's hands. Will Harith try to block the review filing? She asked. He can't. Once it's formally submitted with the escrow amount attached, Port Authority is legally required to acknowledge it and pause the auction. He doesn't have discretion on that. The law is clear. Drav tapped the page. What he can do is find procedural problems with the filing if we make any mistakes. The language has to be exact. The citation has to match the correct statute number. If we get a single reference wrong, he can reject it on technical grounds. Then we don't get anything wrong. Drav nodded. He pulled a blank form from the bottom of the stack. He had already found the filing template. Of course he had. Rhea leaned forward and looked at it. Line by line. She read slowly and carefully. When she did not understand a term, she asked. Drav explained. He had clearly read everything twice already and was now just waiting for her to catch up. It took them 2 hours to draft the filing correctly. They cross-referenced the statute numbers 3 times. They pulled Port Nevil's public processing logs and found the exact timestamp when Port Duval's mislabeled manifest had been received and processed without an error flag, which meant Port Nevil's system had accepted the wrong classification, making the port itself a contributing factor in the debt. When they were done, Rhea sat back and looked at the finished document. It was 2 pages of careful, boring, precise legal language. It was the least dramatic thing she had ever written. It was also, she suspected, the most important. She looked at Drav. Ready? He had already transferred his 2,100 credits to a joint escrow staging account. He was putting his jacket on. 15 minutes ago, he said. They went back to level 3 at 2,100 hours, when the Port Authority building was quieter and the front desk was staffed by a single clerk who was clearly not expecting anyone to walk in with a legal filing that evening. Ria set the document on the desk. We need to submit a formal co-signatory review filing under Section 12, Subclause 4 of the Vorith Commercial Penalty Code. Reference: Impound Order on Bay 14, Vessel Ember Drift. She slid the escrow confirmation across as well. 4,200 credits posted. Full amount. The clerk stared at the papers. He picked up the escrow confirmation first, looked at the number, then looked at her. Then he looked at the legal filing. His expression was the expression of someone who had not been trained for this particular situation. I will need to contact Captain Harith, he said. That's fine, Ria said. We'll wait. They waited in the corridor outside. Ria leaned against the wall. Drav stood with his arms folded, looking at nothing in particular. After 12 minutes, Harith came out. He was not in his full uniform. It was late, and he had probably already left his office once tonight. But he was composed. He was always composed. He looked at Ria, then at Drav, then at the filing in his hand, which the clerk had clearly just given him. This is a co-signatory review, he said. Yes, Ria said. You're posting 4,200 in escrow. Already posted. Confirmation is attached. Harith looked at the document more carefully. He was reading it the way Ria had expected him to, looking for the mistake, the wrong statute number, the missing reference, anything he could use to reject it on technical grounds and send them away with nothing. He read for a while. The corridor was very quiet. Ria watched his eyes move across the page, and she felt the particular tension of having worked very hard to not make a single error and now waiting to find out if she had succeeded. Harith stopped on the second page. He read something twice. His expression did not change, but something behind it did. A small, careful shift, like a door closing. You've cited Port Nevil's incoming processing log, he said. Timestamp 432, 14 days ago. The manifest receipt from Port Duval. Yes, Ria said. At that timestamp, your system received a manifest with a mislabeled cargo class and processed it without generating an error flag. Under Subclause 4, that constitutes a contributing port system error. It's in your own records. Those logs are internal. They're public record under Article 9 of the Confederacy Commerce Transparency Act. I requested them this afternoon. The timestamps are exact. Harith set the document down at his side. He looked at Ria with the measured, careful look of a man recalculating. This filing pauses the auction, he said. It was almost to himself. The review outcome is not guaranteed. If the Confederacy Commerce Office rules that the contributing error does not meet the threshold for debt reassessment, the payment is forfeited. I understand that. You are risking 4,200 credits on a review that may not succeed. I know what I'm risking. He looked at her for a long moment. Ria did not look away. Then Harith said, very quietly, why? It was the second time someone had asked her that question today. The first time, she had given Santal a simple answer. This time she thought about giving Harith the same answer. And then she thought of something else, something better, because Harith was not Santal and a simple answer was not what this moment needed. Because she filed her explanation the same day she came in, Ria said. Within the first 24 hours. In the same window where a formal appeal would have been possible. She did everything right. She just used the wrong word because nobody told her what the right word was. She paused. You knew that when you reviewed her file. And you let the window close anyway. The corridor was silent. Harith looked at the filing in his hand. He looked at the escrow confirmation. There is also, Ria added, the matter of Mr. Breck's listing. I told you I have no knowledge. He used the phrase pending auction outcome. That's Port Authority language. It's in your internal communications template, not in public documents. He would have needed to see an official notice or speak to someone who had. She kept her voice level. If that comes up in a Confederacy Commerce review, and I would make sure it does, the question won't just be about this debt. It will be about how many other impounds move through this port with a buyer already lined up. Harith was very still. Ria waited. She was good at waiting. After a long moment, Harith looked at the clerk, who had appeared in the doorway. Process the filing, he said. Log the auction hold on Bay 14. He looked back at Ria. The review will be submitted to the Commerce Office tonight. He handed the document back to the clerk and walked away down the corridor without another word. Ria let out a breath slowly, through her nose, so Drav would not hear it. Drav heard it anyway. Smooth, he said. Quiet, she said. They walked back to the elevator together. Below them, Bay 14 was still sealed, but for the first time in 3 days, it was not going to open for an auctioneer in the morning. The Commerce Review decision came back in 19 hours. The message was from the Confederacy Commerce Review Office. It was short. The contributing port system error had been verified. The original debt was reassessed and reduced to 0, on the grounds that the mislabeling had originated from Port Duval's outbound processor, and Port Nevil's system had compounded it by processing the manifest without flagging the inconsistency. The escrow funds were being returned in full. Ria read it twice. Then she set the comm unit down on the console and sat very still for a moment. Drav appeared in the cockpit doorway. He had his own comm unit in his hand. He had clearly gotten the same message. 19 hours, he said. That's fast for a commerce review. Harith probably expedited it, Ria said. He wanted this finished before anyone else started pulling on the Breck thread. Drav considered that. Smart. For him, yes. Ria stood up. Come on. They found Santal at Bay 14 before they even reached the docking level. She was already there, standing in front of the door with a Port Authority release notice in her hand. The yellow impound seal had been removed. A maintenance worker was finishing the last clearance checks on the docking clamps. The door was unlocked. Santal was very still. Her bioluminescent patches were burning bright. A clear, steady glow that Ria had not seen from her before. Not the flickering dim of grief. Something else entirely. Something that looked, even on a face built nothing like a human face, like relief so deep it had become quiet. She turned when she heard them coming. The review passed, Ria said. Santal looked at her. I know. I received the notice 10 minutes ago. She paused. I also received the escrow return confirmation. My debt is cleared. Another pause, shorter this time. It says the filing was submitted by 2 co-signatories. R. Nair and T. Drav. Drav lifted a hand slightly. Ria said nothing. You used your own money, Santal said. It came back, Ria said. You did not know that it would. Ria did not answer that. There was not a clean answer to it, and Santal was clearly smart enough to know what the silence meant. The maintenance worker finished his check, nodded at Santal, and walked away down the corridor. They were alone now, the 3 of them, in front of the open door of the Ember Drift. It was not a large ship. Ria could see the front of the corridor inside, a narrow passage with worn panels and handmade storage brackets along the walls, the kind of modifications that people made when they lived somewhere for a long time. There was a small framed image fixed near the entrance. A place somewhere, green and wide. She did not ask about it. Santal stepped forward and placed her palm flat against the hull. It was a deliberate gesture, slow and careful, the kind of movement that had meaning behind it. She kept her hand there for a moment. Then she turned and extended that same palm toward Ria. Open. Steady. Ria did not know what it meant. She had never seen the gesture before. But she understood it the way you understood some things without translation, by the weight of it, by the way Santal held it. She raised her own hand and pressed her palm against Santal's. They stayed like that for a moment. Then both hands dropped. Among my people, Santal said quietly, you place your hand on what matters most to you. And then you offer that same hand to the one you wish to honor. It means, you are as real to me as this. She looked at the ship, then back at Ria. I have no other way to say what I want to say. Ria's chest did something complicated. She did not name it. You don't need to say anything else, Ria said. Santal looked at both of them. I have heard many things about humans since I began flying these routes. That you are stubborn. That you act before you think. That you feel everything too much and too loudly. Her patches glowed steadily. I believe all of it is true. Drav made a short sound that was almost a laugh. Good, Ria said. They left her at the Ember Drift's door, standing at the entrance of 11 years of her life, returned to her by a legal clause and 2 humans who had nothing to gain and a delivery schedule to keep. The Callan's run departed Port Nevel at 1,400 hours. Ria sat at the controls and watched the port fall away behind them in the display screen. She did not say anything for a while. Neither did Drav. After some time, he said, we're behind schedule. I know. Client's going to complain. They always complain. Drav was quiet again. Then worth it. Ria watched Port Nevel disappear into the dark. Yeah, she said. Worth it.